you to everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'm very excited to be part of Women in Social Housing Southwest Branch's relaunch. We've got a fantastic new board of enthusiastic women from across the sector, and it's just lovely to have so many people joining us today. This event is being recorded, so anything that I say that I ask to be edited out, please forgive. But please don't let that stop any and all contributions today. We can have anonymous chat. You can have your videos off during Q&A later, or on as you wish. I just want to let you know this to me is a safe space for everybody to say hello and chat. First of all, start off with thanks to Natasha and Tristone Nash for all of the support over this year, 2020, and specifically for the sponsorship of this event. Tristone Nash has very kindly made a donation to Mind on behalf of Women in Social Housing Southwest, and Eileen, who asked for that, and what a fantastic cause to be donating to. So for those of you who aren't familiar with WISH, this is predominantly a networking group run across the country. Women in Social Housing Southwest has been around for a long time, but the current format has come together after a bit of a hiatus. We, those of us on the board, wanted to bring together ladies from across the housing sector in our region to support and encourage each other, working towards greater gender equality and pay parity. And that's all I wanted to say on that front. Most of you will be familiar with WISH, but if you're not, please have a look at the website or get in touch afterwards. So we've got a fantastic board of 10 ladies. We've got Natasha, who's been with us for a long time, and fantastic she is too. We've got Sinead from Catalyst Housing up in the corner. Hi, Sinead. And then we've got Dina Blake from Leicester Aldridge, Heidi Lashon from Sovereign, Katie Stamper from Live West. Apologies, I am checking all my notes to make sure I get everyone in. Emma Osmondson from Exeter City Living. Hi, Emma. Naomi Sweeting from Alliance Homes. Hey, Naomi. Ros Trotman from Thrings, and Lindsay Megson from the National Practitioner Support Service. That was a real run through all of our members. So just as a brief intro, why did we pick wellbeing today for our relaunch? 2020 has been an interesting year so far, and we wanted to make our relaunch talk about how we all are and how you all are, and just be a supportive space to say hello and let people talk to one another. We know that many of the women across the sector will have experienced furlough and redundancy, whether themselves, colleagues, friends, and the 2020 has been stressful. So we wanted to give everyone some more time to in their lunch break, come together, say hello, check in, and talk about some difficult things and maybe some of the positive things that can come out of this. So rather than me rambling on any much longer, I'd just like to say that please ask questions as we go through if you want to. Put them in the chat, and if I can ask everyone bar Sinead and Aileen to switch off their cameras, I will pass on to Sinead to introduce Aileen, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Megan. Well, we're absolutely delighted to have Aileen with us today. So Aileen, for those of you who don't know, actually I don't think she needs any introductions, but I will do an introduction. Aileen has been working in social housing for over 30 years, so has a wealth of experience and knowledge. She's currently Chief Executive of Grand Union Housing, but also the President of the Chartered Institute of Housing, our professional body. And when Aileen started her presidency with CIH, she actually wanted to highlight and shine a light, is actually the term that she's been using herself, on mental health in the sector. Aileen herself is a huge advocate for mental well-being, and we're actually absolutely delighted to have her with us today to be able to shine a light on that important subject even more. But not only raise an awareness with us, but in her own terms, and to quote an interview that you did with Inside Housing, I believe, Aileen, you want to leave a legacy behind you once you've finished your presidency with the CIH for us to do better and to be better around the subject of mental health. So I'll pass over to you shortly, but just before I do, ladies, Aileen has said you're able to ask her anything throughout the session. There is don't hold back, there is no silly questions, no question is off limits. But equally, if you don't feel able to or want to actually ask the question, please do use the chat facility, or you're open to ask a question after the session and we can facilitate getting that across to Aileen for you and the answer. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Aileen, and welcome to this event.
Thank you very much for having me. I've got a bit of a presentation, but before I put that up, I'll just talk a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today. And what I'm going to talk about is kind of my mental health and well-being through my career, because I'm aware that actually there will be people at different stages in their career. And so I thought I'd do a little bit of how I kind of got here and how and why mental health is important to me. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully we are great. That's our presentation. So hopefully you can see that now. So here I am. And can I first of all say I'm a great fan of Wish, and thank you very much for having me. I think Wish has been around a few years now, and it's great to see it becoming more prominent and women working together to support women. So I'm a really big fan of that. So as I said, before I talk about well-being, I wanted to talk about being a woman in the sector, because I've been a woman in the sector for actually quite a few years, far more than I'll admit to. So I thought I'd share a little bit of my backstory, and then thinking about how we come to be here today with a real focus on mental health. So I started my career as a trainee at Nottingham City Council, and they were really focused on making sure that people got their CIH qualification. So I can't let this go past without mentioning the CIH, because actually the CIH has really supported me through my career. I was promoted in a variety of jobs internally, but when I was looking to leave, and actually I found things a little bit more difficult. So this is a photo of a lift door. You might wonder why I'm showing you a photo of a lift door. When I was the first job interview I went for out of Nottingham City Council, I will never, ever, ever, ever forget it. I was so nervous and so feeling so out of my depth that I was hyperventilating going up in the lift. I'd never ever hyperventilated before, and I was quite clear I was never ever going to hyperventilate from them, because I vowed that I would never ever be in that place mentally again. And that was kind of the start of my journey of working on myself, really, or at least became aware of the need to do something to improve my confidence, because actually being so paralysed with fear that you can't talk in an interview isn't a great place to be. So I knew that if I was going to fulfil my potential, then or what I thought was my potential, then I needed to do something different. And I think it was at that point that I felt, that was the first time I can remember thinking, Lord, Aileen, you need to do something different here. So for me, it was about planning and thinking about the qualities I needed to have. And I read a lovely quote the other day that said, if you're planning for a year, sow rice. If you're planning for a decade, plant trees. If you're planning for a lifetime, educate. And so for me, it was about what I needed to do for my self. So through various roles, I ended up here. And you know, there were a lot of people. I've been at Grand Union for 20 odd years, and there were a lot of people who said, "Well, why did you stay at Grand Union so long when you could have left?" Actually, my husband was really mentally ill during that time, and that meant that my focus was around clearly doing a good job. I've got great pride in work, and so doing a good job at Grand Union, but also supporting a suicidal husband and 5-year-old twins, and actually that juggling was really difficult, and left a kind of a mark on me that taught me some lessons. And so I'm just going to share a few slides really about some of the lessons that I learned, and I'll talk a little bit more about the mental health and well-being in a minute. I think fundamental to my belief and my learning to be myself was learning to trust and be trusted. And actually, I think good mental health and good well-being is really about being able to live with yourself. I actually don't know. Well, I do know how this guy lives with himself, because he's a narcissistic bully and he doesn't actually see that there's anybody else in his world. And actually, that's what mental illness is like. I'm quite convinced he's not well, and I wonder whether or not he's actually had COVID, but that's a separate issue. So for me, learning to trust yourself and learning to trust in others is fundamental to good well-being. The other thing I've learned, and I think we have lost the ability to do this a lot, is that we're in a world now where it's all very binary. And I think that impacts on how people feel about themselves and how people feel about other people. So what we have is a world where things are right or wrong, and we have lost the ability to constructively disagree. And constructively disagreeing with something or somebody is important and uncomfortable. So if you didn't think you were going to see 50 Shades of Grey in your presentation today, well, here you are, because actually we need to be able to be kind to ourselves by seeing the nuance, by seeing things from other people's perspective, as well as by seeing things from your own perspective. The other thing I've learned, and actually this has been fundamental to my well-being, is that being wrong and saying it is cool. Being vulnerable and admitting it is good, because actually it means you stop being something that you're not. You stop being that person who thinks that they have to have all the answers. Actually saying, do you know what, I got this wrong, or yeah, you know, you've made a good point, I have changed my view. Thinking about the last slide where we have this thing about making you know, things being right or wrong, actually being able to change your view. Once I learned that about myself, actually I slept easier in my bed at night, because I wasn't holding on to stuff that I then realised was not the right way. So yes, so confidence doesn't mean that you're always right. It means that you're not afraid to be wrong, and you're not afraid to show vulnerability. And so something that coming up next, where we're in thinking about well-being, sometimes some of us struggle with, and this is about being brave. I don't know if you've watched Brave, the film. I think it's a Pixar film. We've watched it. I've watched it with my girls loads and loads of times. I think Merida is a wonderful role model, and actually what she does is gets herself into situations and then thinks, well, I've got to deal with this. And actually that has been So although I have had anxiety before I did a House of Commons Select Committee, for example, I just think, well, that's normal, and actually I need to think about how I use my anxiety. So there's no such thing as having no anxiety about stuff. If we didn't worry about stuff, we'd all be Donald Trump, because I think, you know, he doesn't see any other path other than the one that he's right. So worrying about stuff and being anxious about stuff, I think, is really is a really important tool, but used well. So used to hone your performance and hone what it is you're going to do, and getting yourself into situations where you think, oh, how did I get here? Well, I'm just going to have to do it. The more I've done that, the easier it has become. And I'm going to talk now about this man. So while we're on American presidents, the other thing I think that has been good for my well-being and thinking about how I am in the world is developing the ability to listen, and not just listening with the view that with the view that I'm thinking about what I am going to say next. Really listening to someone's to what someone says. The way Obama formed his view on things is something that we don't probably often have the luxury to do, but should do more of. He got experts in a room who had different views about the same thing, and he asked them a few questions and he let them talk, and then he worked out what he was going to think about it. I think that's a marvelous model for being wise. And being wise helps you be well. So finally, I guess the point of all of that is understanding yourself and being yourself. This is an Oscar Wilde quote. Be yourself because everybody else is taken. Actually, being who you are and understanding who you are, I think, is a discovery worth making. Being yourself. Once I learned I didn't have to be my mother, it was a complete revelation to me. I adored my mother. She was wonderful, but she was very fearful. That stopped her from doing things. Actually, so being yourself, working out who you are and being that person is great for making sure that you don't have that conflict within yourself that causes compromises to your well-being. So, talking about well-being, this is me learning to turn down my inner critic. So, dealing with the slide on the right hand first, giving my inner critic a volume button was a revelation for me. And so, but when I'm struggling, this is what happens. This is what happens to me. I can't stop scrolling through social media, so I try and limit myself. My body feels heavy and tired. You know, I kind of ignore people. I go into my shell a bit. I spend time by myself. How many times have you been in a situation where something really little triggers you? And so, you know, and I doubt myself. And so giving myself an alternative narrative, which is the stuff on the right hand, stuff that turns that I don't want to be here into, well, you know, I'm tough. You know, I can be tough, and remind myself of the times when I have been tough. You know, these challenges are here to teach me. So what is that I'm going to learn? And the most important one for me is the bottom one. You know, my kids have had exams at school this week, and one of them has been really overwhelmed by the enormity of it all. It's the first time they've ever had exams. They should have had them in the summer, but they didn't get them because they weren't in school. And Imogen, my second daughter, has been completely overwhelmed. So helping her eat the elephant a bite at a time and just do one thing. Okay, so we're going to do this thing and we're going to do it for an hour. And then we're going to do the next thing and we're going to do that for an hour. And then we're going to do the next thing. And then if we need to come back and do more things, then we'll do that. But we're only going to think about the next thing. I think for for when I'm struggling, actually thinking about doing the next thing is the best thing for me. So, you know, most of you will know, or many of you will know, I grew up in a home with a dad who was seriously depressed all his life. I didn't know what sort of father I was going to go home to every day. His best friend ended his life when I was 5, and my dad actually wasn't well for most of his life after that. So that bred an anxiety in me. So making sure I do the next thing and the next thing and the thing after that is a way that I cope. I've become an uncomfortable but reluctant list maker, because that's the stuff that helps me cope. That anxiety it can be coped with if I recognise the signs and go into that. I'm just going to focus not on the big picture future, but on what's happening next. And when my husband was really ill, you know, he was standing on a railway station platform one day and rang me and said, I don't know whether to get on this train or jump in front of it. Actually, I just had to take one day at a time, because I knew that I needed to be mentally well in order to hold it together for everyone else. And the thing I didn't do immediately at the time was seek some counselling support. But eventually, when I did, actually that made a real difference to me. I had a great GP. You know, he gave me some medication, and if I need medication now, then I go and get it. I haven't needed it for a while, but you know, don't be worried about talking about how you feel to people that can help you do something about it. So doing something about it in current circumstances and thinking about the impacts of coronavirus. So I thought, well, for a bit of light relief, I thought we could have a bit of Dolly Parton. Working 9 to 5 from home. I haven't tied my husband up. I'm pouring me his coffee in a yellow cup whilst tied to a chair. But although sometimes it has been tempting, I have to say. Although we're 21 years married today, so that kind of says about the stickability really of our relationship. But from February to May, I didn't get up from my computer, it felt like, and I was trying to support my kids, and my husband was having a whole new load of challenge because he no longer works as a result of his poor mental health and poor mental health practice at work. Holding all that together was really difficult, especially when I picked this up from LinkedIn. I haven't become the football analyst, or I've become I've paid attention to my fitness better through lockdown, because I think that has really helped me stay mentally well. But I've done all these other things, and you know, it feels like I'm living at work, and work is living at home. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and he said, well, I have a desk, my desk is inside my hall, and every time I walk in my front door, I feel like I'm at work. You're going to feel like that. So finding some separation, and this COVID isn't going anywhere soon, finding some ways to do things that maybe weren't the way you did things, but are nonetheless valuable in helping you be mentally healthy, I think is a really, identifying those for yourself is a really great thing to do. So I always share this slide because, well, what is mental health? So mental health is something that we all have. It's, you know, we're either struggling or we're thriving, and most of the time we're bobbling along in the middle. And I'll share a tool that I use quite a bit. We use here at Grand Union a lot to identify, actually, so where are the bits that I'm struggling. So we don't bat an eyelid if people have cancer or have other disabilities, but nonetheless there is still a stigma around mental health, and actually smashing that stigma and making sure that we can talk about it will lead us all to be mentally better, but we'll have mentally healthy, happier organisations. You know, I've had a member of staff in my office today who's suffered a really sudden bereavement, and actually, you know, just 15 minutes spending talking to her, I think, or spending listening to her, because that was what she needed, is, you know, we need to create organisations that are all like that. And I'm on a mission to make sure Grand Union is like that to its furthest corner, that if people want to talk, they know they can. 1 in 4 of us will be encountering challenges with our mental health at any one time. That's 25% of your mates, 25% of your family, 25% of the people who you work with. Just think about that. You know, think about who you might be struggling, or who might be struggling in your circle. But also, if you are struggling, think about some of the things that you can put in place for that. And so then, and also thinking about we're all women, and I often say that. So the menopause will be experienced physically by 50% of us, but it will be experienced by 100% of the population, because the menopause robbed me of my confidence. I know you might find that difficult to believe, but that was kind of that was me understanding that it was the menopause that was. I couldn't get behind the wheel of a car, didn't want to drive. I didn't want to drive anywhere. I had Mrs. Angry in my head. I needed a minder when I went anywhere because I couldn't remember anything, and people would walk towards me and I'd think, I know this person, I know this person really well, and I have no clue who they are. I can't remember their name. So the menopause does funny things to you. We do not talk about the menopause enough. So talk about the menopause in your organisations, because it will be having an impact. One of the greatest things that happened to me as a result of doing this work was that I got a text from somebody who said, I heard you speak about the menopause. We had a woman who was behaving really oddly in our team, and we were about to discipline her, and actually we've sat down and chatted to her, and we're now supporting her with some symptoms that are menopausal, due to the menopause. So talk about it, talk about how you feel, and put some support in place. We have a menopause policy here, and you know, it's just I don't know who reads it, but it is one of those building blocks that says it's okay to talk about that stuff here. So when Sinead talked about wanting to leave a legacy, I wanted to leave something in the housing sector that supported better mental health in organisations. And this is downloadable from the Grand Union and the CIH and the Mind websites. We worked with Mind to develop this guide, because actually people in housing do difficult jobs, and in the context of austerity and the rowing back of the state, I think very often housing staff, housing colleagues have been at the front line with actually not a lot of support from those other agencies. So thinking about how we could support them, the inspiration came for this one Christmas when I was wrapping Christmas presents and listening to a podcast of the guy who developed Oscar Kilo, which is the support toolkit for the emergency services. This was what I wanted to leave. I wanted to give something that says, let's help us be better. We're going to update this at some point in the not too distant future. The other thing I wanted to do, and the 6 commitments, I was moving on to the next slide then, but the 6 commitments that are part of that are around being able to have open conversations about mental health, designing a work and culture to drive positive mental health, particularly in lockdown, people doing really, really boring, mundane process jobs that we can use artificial intelligence to do, and they're at home with no support from the colleagues. Thinking about how we can use AI positively for good, I think is helpful. Promoting an open culture around mental health, so thinking about how we can make sure that people know we're open to have the conversations. We use our intranet here. We have a mental health space on our intranet. Increasing our organisational confidence and capability, you know, about being sure that as organisations we can tackle the causes of mental health and do that in a way that provides for healthy workplaces, providing mental health tools and support, so training mental health first aiders, for example, and the slide I'm going to show you next, which is about a guide that another guide that we've released as a follow-up to Shine a Light, and increasing transparency and accountability through internal and external reporting. I know that last year mental health absence at Grand Union cost £114,000. It was 34% of our absence. Actually, that's below the national average. National average is 44% of staff absence being mental health related. And so understanding that leads you to try and find some solutions for it. And so download it because there's some really useful support in there. And this is the guide that we released a couple of weeks ago at the Housing Festival. This was about how we supported tenants with mental health problems, because I was very conscious that when you're dealing with the difficult rent arrears case or an antisocial behaviour case, for example, you know, some of that will take its toll on you. And I want our staff to remain compassionate and to be supported to remain compassionate. So that's a really simple guide that deals with some of our regular interactions with our customers, the people we're here to serve. And you know, well, I hope you find it helpful. And then moving on, I use this a lot. And actually people at Grand Union, whenever I post my form score at Grand Union, people invariably post theirs. People invariably tell me how they are. And so you mark each of these statements down the left out of 10 by using this key on the side. This is a really easy way to start a conversation about mental health in your organisation. It is downloadable from an organisation called insideout.org, and their founder, a guy called Rob Stevenson, is just an amazing speaker of around mental health. He lives with a bipolar illness and manages, like actually loads of us who have mental health challenges, manages to be healthy functioning. Because I think, you know, if most of us, that 1 in 4 are challenged at any one time, 75% of us have had some challenges through lockdown, according to the ONS, with our mental health. So looking about this, actually, it tells you where to pay attention. So, for example, have I exercised well lately? Well, that will normally lead to me a drop in my energy levels. So I've learned the value of self-care, and this is one of the best tools I've come across for self-care. So have a go with that, because I think it's fab. And with no more ado, I use a range of other tools as well, actually. So things like Headspace and the Calm app and other bits and pieces. Everybody Matters mental health tool from the NHS is Every Mind Matters is a really good thing to use too. But this is a great way of starting the conversation. So with that, I'm finished and happy to take any of your questions. If any of you want to make a donation to the CIH fundraising page, then please click on the link there. That's me on Twitter, and that's my LinkedIn. But I'm happy to take absolutely any questions you may have about what I've just said or anything else, actually. So we're amongst friends. Ask away. I'll stop sharing now.
Aileen, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today. Just like to invite everyone, if you would like to share your videos again, please do. It'd be lovely to see all your beautiful faces again. And likewise, if you'd like to unmute, please do, so that we can talk to one another. We have had some questions come in during your talk. Thank you, Aileen. The first one, oh yes, can I let you all share your videos? If someone else would like to unmute while I try and sort out videos, please do. Well, so Sinead asked a question. Are there any steps you took and would advise others to take to learn to trust more?
For a person who has quite strong control freak tendencies, actually learning to trust was a big thing. And I had to do quite a lot of work on this. I had to do a real amount of work on this. And how I did that was I did a piece of work with my coach that was around not controlling everything, and that taught me that actually I have been trusted in my life, and I have grown as a result of that trust. I think the trust placed in me to do stuff, and the trust actually that I would make mistakes and I would learn from them. But that trust placed in me, and seeing that actually if I trusted others, I could kind of help them have that same outcome. And I'm passionate about helping people grow and develop. So thinking about how you genuinely empower people is to start with that conversation about trust. But it's also to be clear that when you're delegating things at work, for example, that you're clear about what it is you want back. Not necessarily the way they're going to do it, because everybody's different. But you find a way to be clear about what it is you're trying to achieve. So that stuff around trusting and I say to my kids now, and all the time through exams when they've been really anxious, it's been, well, I trust you, I really, really trust you. And so doing that at work then is a natural. I want my children to grow up and empowered and powerful. Actually, I want people here to be empowered and powerful, and the people around me. And to do that, you have to trust. And so it was learning that lesson that helped me back off and think, do you know what? If I trust, others will learn. Why wouldn't you want that?
That's some really great points. Thank you. I think a couple of points from that I pick up on is one of them is remembering that trusting doesn't necessarily mean liking everyone around you or needing to be liked by everyone around you. And part of that as well is remembering that we are all different, as you said, and we've all got different personality traits, and the way in which we interact with each other is very different. And just because somebody is different doesn't mean we can't empathise with them and learn to get on or do our jobs alongside each other.
Well, and learn to take the strengths from their approach. I've worked with over the years, it's driven me absolutely bonkers, but I've learned loads from them. I've learned absolutely loads from them, because it's, they do something really stunning and I think, oh God, I wonder how they did that. And maybe I'll go and have a conversation that says, so, I saw you just do that then, and actually that was really great. Tell me how you did it, because that makes you learn.
For me, I think I asked that question, Aileen, before you went on to something in your slides about it being okay to be vulnerable, because I think for me personally, it's trusting people with my vulnerabilities. That's why, anybody can come to me with their problems and I'll support them and they trust me to do that, but I struggle to put my vulnerabilities out there. So what I posted on LinkedIn yesterday was a huge step for me to actually do. But it's you're right. It's obviously it's a two-way game, and you need to do it. But and when you said in your presentation about it's okay to be vulnerable, and being confident is about not being afraid to get things wrong, and you're absolutely right. And we just need to learn to take those steps, I suppose. And if we want to work and live in an environment, a safe environment, to be able to be open and be vulnerable more, we're part of that change. We can't just rely upon our leaders to create that environment. We need to do it ourselves.
Well, and leaders are people. Leaders aren't at the top of this organisation. We have leaders in this organisation who are who are not even managing people, but actually they are wise people who people listen to. That's my definition of a leader. It's not about your position. And so thinking about, and that vulnerability, I think, is key. And once I learned that, and it was a bit scary when I started doing it, actually what you get back is honesty. And wouldn't you rather deal and work with people with whom you could be completely honest, and because you've been completely honest, they were completely honest with you?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
And it's bloody hard sometimes. And sometimes, I go home a bit like a lettuce, but actually it's just so worthwhile.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something, Aileen? Thanks for sharing. It was really inspiring to hear your story. I've got an observation, which it's I don't like to say it almost, but what I've found throughout my career and sort of experience a little bit at the moment is women often don't support each other, and I find that female bosses sometimes, I'm working in an environment where the exec team is all female, it feels like a competition, and it feels like you can't be vulnerable. And I'm sort of in a space that I've struggled in the past with my own mental health, and I'm in a situation where I'm in quite a senior role. I have my own Imogen as well, who's facing exams and is very anxious. I have an autistic son who is very anxious. I have a husband who's struggling with mental illness, and there isn't really any allowance for that at work. It feels like people are like, well, I'm a mother. It's that kind of feels like a competition, and you're not allowed to do that because they're in the same situation. There's like, that doesn't seem to kind of cut through in the same way actually was when I've had male sort of bosses in the past. They feel actually that they are more empathetic and more compassionate in a way.
I think that you're in an organisation where women who've got there are then pulling up the ladder.
Yeah.
That's awful. And talking about ladders, it's about making sure your ladder's up against the right wall, and you might need. So if you can't have that conversation with those individuals because you're clearly unhappy, and I can see you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders. So if you want to message me after, I'll
Thank
support you. But it is about, so can you have that conversation that says, this is what I see. This is what I see. And, and for me to be effective in this organisation and feel like I want to be here, because you won't be the only person feeling that, then I need something different. So, but if you want to drop me a line,
Thank you.
I'll try and support you, because I've been where you are, and it's not nice, and it's just a real shame that women are doing that, because it's just shouldn't be.
Yeah, I think it's hard, isn't it? I've experienced it throughout my career. It starts when you get pregnant almost, that people say, well, it's not an illness. I was actually in bed for 9 months with severe hyperemesis, and then it's birth, isn't it? It's like, well, I did it without any pain relief. It just seems that
well, I can cope with stress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think the tide is beginning to turn, but we're on a mission here to be an organisationally kind organisation here at Grand Union. That's what I want to create. And our staff have responded. Our colleagues, I don't like calling people staff, have responded brilliantly through lockdown. But it's about creating the environment to get the best out of people. And are your work getting the best out of you? Probably not, I'd say.
Try my best.
I know you're trying,
yeah.
But actually, there's that bit that you're holding back, isn't there? That says, I can't be myself here. So yeah, drop me a message afterwards, and
Thank you.
Aileen, perhaps, Megan, Natasha, maybe this is something we can take forward as Wish, and potentially do something around, it's a conversation obviously to have offline, Aileen, but maybe look at doing some collaborative work. This is not the first time I heard this. I attended a kind of a mini Wish session years ago when it first launched, and that was one of the first questions that was asked and raised was actually, we talk about supporting each other, but a lot of the time it's women on other women that are adding as part of the stress and strains of the working life. So it's, as much as the tides are turning, it seems to be an ongoing issue, and I think maybe we need to raise a little bit more awareness about it potentially, and I think that's something that Wish could do.
No, let's do, and it'll be difficult, but actually the other thing I've learned is that you've got to be brave and have these difficult conversations and get them out in the open. You know, there are examples of precisely the behaviour you've described, Naomi, and you know, we need to, you know, we're better than that. We are better than that. We need to do something different. Can I just pick up on Tracy's point about being the caring one, is someone a way to keep us safe? Do you know, I was that person, cared about everybody else and not me. And when I learned that actually if I wanted to be a good supporter for other people, I absolutely needed to take care of myself. And then worked out how to take care of myself, because that wasn't easy. That actually, and learning to say no, that was one of the hardest things, because my mum would always say, oh, Aileen will do that for you. Oh, Aileen will do that for you. So my example in my house was, well, Aileen will do that for you. And I did. But learning to say, actually, do you know, I'm not going to do that. Not I can't do it, but because can't implies that there's a power other than you that is saying no. No, I'm not going to do that. Or and you could do it in a nice way, but learning to say no was a really big thing for me. And so doing that stuff around making time for yourself to do. I learned to tap dance. That was the first thing I did, to go and spend some time for myself, because actually nobody could tap dance with me. So yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you can hear me, but yeah. So it's that thing around putting yourself first, and the airline thing about oxygen. You're absolutely hopeless to anyone, and if you can't set boundaries, you're not helping anyone either. So it's really out of caring for others that you need to care for yourself first. It's just, but we get into patterns, don't we? And we have ways we're expected to behave,
but we can break those patterns.
Definitely.
And as I say, that, you know, my biggest pattern was not being my mother.
Yeah.
You know, I would open my mouth and my mother would fall out continually. And once I thought, well, actually, I don't think that, I'm going to say something else. The world didn't end, the sky didn't fall in. And I became myself, uncomfortable with myself. And all of those things that I shared is the stuff that I learned for me. You'll have different lessons for you.
And if you don't show up as yourself, your behaviour is dysfunctional, and so you don't really facilitate. And going back to that conversation about poor women leaders, it's probably they're following patterns and they're not actually authentic, and therefore there's all this angst going on and dysfunctional behaviour, shadow behaviour, I'd call it, because they can't be themselves.
Yeah, Carol Matthews, Riverside's chief exec, tells a story about when she first went to work in an organisation as a manager, quite a senior manager, and for the first year spent it being like the men. Yeah. And then when she learned at the end of that year that wasn't a happy place for her to be, and she wasn't going to be one of the boys, actually she became then one of the people who was out of the tent, and they were, and that shaped her behaviour. There is that stuff around, and that's that stuff about working out who you are and then resolutely being in that person. And if you're not able to be that person, then you need to think about the environment that you're trying to be somebody else in, because it's not good. It's not good for your health, not good for your mental health at all.
Yeah, that comes back to company culture again, doesn't it, Aileen? Because of course a lot of us would like to be ourselves, but we're either too junior, too downtrodden, or whatever else to actually be our authentic selves. And I know that a lot of us have Teams meetings. I know I have a daily Teams meeting with my officers, and there'll often be a quiet voice in the corner who doesn't feel able to speak up for whatever reason. And so part of letting people be authentic is giving space for those people to stand up and be heard in whatever way they want to be heard.
No, absolutely. I can't type my email address in here. It's not letting me. Type. But it's aileen.evans@guhg.co.uk. Sorry, it won't time. I don't know why it won't, but anyway.
Share it up. Someone's just
Great. Now Lisa's just done it. So the wonderful. Yeah, how come you've got them? So Lisa is my colleague who keeps me sane and organised. So yeah. So yeah. No, and I'm happy to contribute to your research, Tracy, and your work because and we need to call it out. And I think it is people being what they think they should be rather than who they are. Any other questions, anyone?
There was one question early on in the chat while you were doing your presentation. I think you may have answered the one about your coping mechanisms for anxiety.
Yeah, the one that I said, you answered that, so yeah.
But then maybe touch on a little bit more around the question around improving wellbeing during lockdown times, whilst colleagues either working from home, and the question around is home a safe place, or whether they're delivering key worker roles with customers that being on the front line. So obviously I think as part of this is some organisations have put some mechanisms in place, but equally I don't think there was the vision that this situation was going to continue on for as long as it has, and to potentially continue on even longer. What else? Have you got any tips or any advice or any thoughts?
And so we didn't fare too badly through the early part of lockdown. I mean, I think it remains to be seen. I'm interested in the impact of COVID and further lockdown, but we've opened our office. I'm working from our office today. We have it's all completely COVID safe. I walk 2 kilometres a day going to the toilet because we have a one-way system. It means I get my steps in going to the loo. So the loo's only bloody 10 yards away. I have to walk all the way around the Ruddy building to get back. But so we've opened our office, and when Boris Johnson spoke a couple of weeks ago, I had about 3 people contacting me and saying, you're not going to shut the office, are you, Aileen, because it's my lifeline. You know, you can't be working from a tea tray in grandma's bedroom for a year without that having some impact on you. And so the other thing we gave, our comms team had a brief to be, we communicated loads. So what I learned was that there is no such thing as too much communication. And in particular, every time there's a government announcement, we follow up with what it means for Grand Union, because it just closes that gap where people are wondering. We've also done quite a lot of fun stuff. So I do a video where I talk about eating cheese. I eat far too much cheese, especially when I'm working from home. I've stuck a no entry sign on the fridge. I don't really talk about work. I talk about how I am. I talk about, you know, the challenges of being Zoom bombed by my kids in the middle of a Teams meeting once, when I have twins, 12-year-old twins, and one ran in and said, "Mum, she's taken my ruler and she's stuck it down her trousers," to everybody who were, you know, and my husband coming in into the middle of a remuneration committee meeting saying, "Are you still doing that meeting?" You think, but actually, you have to make that right for people. You have to make that so that it's because it's what's happening and it's what's going to happen. But the comms team also became the fun team. So we've had daft competitions about who's the best pet, who's got the best pet worker. We had our I'm not sure, there might have been a copyright issue to this, but he did it anyway. The comms manager photoshopped the heads of various members of staff onto album covers and invited them to guess. We've done silly videos. We've done people's doing a lockdown diary. We've done quizzes. We've done little competitions. We're going to have to think about how we have Christmas and do our Christmas traditions. One of our staff here is a really good singer and leads Christmas carol singing every year. So we'll video him. I haven't told him that yet because I've only just thought of that. But, you know, we'll ask him to do a video so that we can have some of our Grand Union traditions. And it is about, you know, checking in. It is about people that you're concerned about, making sure that you notice. And that's why form score is really good, because people tell you if they're having a rubbish time. or if they don't put it on the internet, they'll ring somebody up and say, do you know what, I'm a 2 out of 10 today. I need help. And so we've just done the stuff that everybody else has been doing. And we've made it clear to people that they've got to be kind to themselves. They've got to take breaks. If they want to go out for a walk, work is a thing you do, not a place you go. And it's not, the hours that you do it in. As long as it gets done, nobody minds when you do it. And if you're coping with your kids because they can't be at school, then we understand that. And actually, our performance has been fine through lockdown, because again, it's about trust. The number of people, I commented on something on LinkedIn the other week where firms are introducing almost like spy software to see if their employees are working. Well, why would you employ people you didn't trust? Why would you do that? So that's about, can I trust this person? Being a conversation or a thoughts that you have at the time you appoint them. If you feel you can't trust them, then don't appoint them. So yeah, we've done fun stuff. We might send something out around Christmas. I haven't told anybody that yet either, but we'll, but it is, it's just accepting and having a culture that accepts that normal life has to go on around all of this. And we just need to be able to be who we are and manage the best we can. Does that help? Sorry.
I think that was enormously helpful, Aileen. Thank you. In the spirit of trying to finish on time, knowing that people do have work to get on with, if not to go to, can I ask for any final questions for Aileen or comments, either in the chat or out loud? Please scream at us now, please.
I would just like to say thank you, Aileen. I really would. I think you're an absolutely wonderful role model, both as a woman and in a leadership position. I just hope that other people continue to see you as the huge advocate that you are. And I would just like to make a pledge here now that I will actually speak up a little bit more about my own experiences, because I have taken on board some of the stuff that's been said today and reflected on it.
The other thing I would say, just before we go, is talk to your kids. Talk to your kids about how you're feeling. Because I grew up in a household where we didn't talk about feelings at all. I have no language for feelings. But my kids need to understand that I'll tell them when I'm feeling, like in an age-appropriate way, because then they'll be able to do it. So they can come and say, Mum, I'm feeling uncertain. Mum, I'm feeling scared. Mum, I'm feeling so-and-so. I don't want my children to grow up bottling up all of their feelings because they think that that's the way you do it. So don't just, say it at work, but talk to your kids. Talk to your kids too, please. It's vital.
100% agree with that, Aileen. I have done my best to keep up to speed with you on Twitter, Aileen, and signpost some of the wonderful resources you've been telling us about today. If there are any more, please everyone respond on Twitter. And as Aileen said, if you feel inspired today, please do make a donation to mine. That would be very much appreciated. Otherwise, I'm going to draw it to a close and say an enormous thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's been really heartwarming for me to know that you're all out there. And thank you to my fellow board members and Aileen specifically. And have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, all. Bye.
Bye. Bye.